So one of my personal nightmares is running PagerDuty, and I was once asked by a team that I was on to stay, relatively sober for about 3 months while the product kind of stabilized. And I really didn't enjoy that because it's really terrible for me to like interview and look for new jobs. I just don't like that. um, but seriously, on top of everything that goes into building a substrate chain or just a blockchain in general, the extra steps of having to maintain APIs and endpoints is just like really difficult to say the least. So Figment has been doing this type of thing for a while, and DataHub is there to try to remove those stresses, at least for me, when things start opening up again, so I can go out and not be on PagerDuty, which would be great. So please welcome Andrew to talk about DataHub, and yeah, please. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yes, I have a chat today focused on developers and building on DataHub. And I want to do it really in two parts. The first part is for people who maybe just getting started on Polkadot. And we have a project called Learn. And Learn is all about people who want to make their first transaction on Polkadot as a developer or really learning about the concepts. And then in the second half, I want to go into a more advanced topic. And I want to talk about, really tell the story of how we built a pretty advanced block explorer called Hubble using our sort of DataHub nodes platform. So those are the two things which I want to do today. But let's start at the beginning. Let's start with Learn and really just describe what Figment Learn is. So we try to solve two problems with Figment Learn. The first problem is when we started talking to developers and we said, hey, why aren't you building a blockchain yet? The common response was, I can't find documentation. It's all over the place. There's a lot of benefits of decentralization, but having to scour the internet for docs and seeing what's up to date and out of date, that's not a benefit of decentralization. So we tried to actually make a place where we could standardize docs about building on blockchains. And so we did, really two things there. One is we tried to put everything in one place, and then we tried to make it easy to compare and contrast different protocols to each other. So for example, you could come to Figment Learn, which is learn.figment.io. I'll give a demo of it in a few slides. But really, when you get there, you can try to compare and contrast. What are the unique things about Polkadot? What can you do that you can't do on other chains? And so really this sort of use case around documentation, a place to go when you're stuck, that's what we started with Learn. But as we talked to our customers more and more, they said, we want to do more. Why can't I do tutorials here? Why can't I actually, start learning some of the concepts through doing? So we took and we created this concept called a pathway. So a pathway is simply a collection of, a handful of tutorials, 5 or 6 tutorials. And we've made one for Polkadot. And the idea here is that we're really targeting people who are just getting started in Polkadot. And, as they learn the concepts, the next thing they say is, well, I don't have any dots. How can I start participating in this ecosystem? So we sort of put those two things together. We made it so you can go through a series of short tutorials, and I'll go through this in 2 slides, but at the end of it, after you complete it, we'll actually send you 1.1 dots so you can get started and get started staking them and sending transactions and really and doing things on the network. In addition to that, we also want people to create more tutorials. So you can get started going through the tutorials, but if you want to extend what you've learned and help other people, we'll actually send you extra tokens if you create tutorials, up to $500 for creating tutorials. And so that is what a pathway is. So Learn really does these two things. We have the standard documentation, and we also have the pathways. And so that's what I want to jump into next. And so if we can switch over to my screen share, I'll actually show you exactly how this works and what it looks like. Great. So here we are. As I mentioned, we are at learn.figment.io. And you'll see on the homepage is on the left-hand side, there's a whole bunch of networks. Like I mentioned, we're trying to be a place where you can come and get lots of knowledge about different blockchain protocols. But if you scroll down on the homepage as well, you'll see in the main section here, Polkadot pathway. Let's go and let's just jump right in and see what this looks like. Okay. So the Polkadot pathway has you go through a series of steps. Step 1, connecting to a node, creating an account, querying the blockchain. And one of the first challenges that developers run into is often, wait, I didn't realize I had to get access to a node. I didn't want to have to run my own node. We were talking before we started about being on PagerDuty and running nodes. A lot of people don't even realize that to start working with blockchain, you have to have some sort of node access if you want to write an application. So to complete this pathway, we've made it really easy for people. We have a system called DataHub. And so DataHub is a hosted node service. And so right here, when you get started, you can click and set up a free account on DataHub. The way it works is that there's a number of protocols you'll see in there. If you sign up for Polkadot, we offer up to 100,000 free requests per day. So you go in here, I'm going to click over to DataHub. So this is learn.figment.io. Here are node services called DataHub, datahub.figment.io. When you log in, you'll see a number of different networks. I'm going to click on Polkadot here. And there's a few things to know when you kind of get into this service. One is that we offer a number of different services on a number of different networks. We have West End, we have the mainnet, we have Kusama, and I'll get more into that later. But what I want to really show you is this tutorial section here. We've integrated the tutorials from Learn right into DataHub, so you can go through step by step, and as you work through the tutorials, you can verify that you've actually completed them. And so, we were first looking over here about getting started, and I'll just kind of click in to this first one, connecting to a node, and you'll see that this is really designed for someone who is really step one, install the Node.js programming language on your laptop. So we've had people who've never programmed before go through this, but what I'll say is that if you have some programming experience, you'll have a much better time. A lot of the concepts here, the goal here is for people who maybe are Web 2 developers to bring them some of the concepts of Web 3. And so we also have videos for each step of the way that we've created that show how this works. And so you go through, you get your laptop set up, get your development environment set up, and then we show all sorts of different ways to start coding. And we describe what all these lines mean. And so it's not just a mindless copy and pasting. We're describing what this means and why this is important and how this works. And if you get through this first tutorial, which is really about just making a basic connection, and you hit submit, you can go back to DataHub and click this verify button, and it will show you, hey, yes, you did all the steps. Congratulations. Or more, that didn't quite work. Let's try something else. And when something doesn't work, we do try to give you some helpful tips or pointers about what to look at and what parts of the code to find. And the goal here is, again, is we want to have people coming to the space and learning about Polkadot. When we were interviewing developers about their pain points, things that they were stuck on, the number one thing that people said, I said, why aren't you developing your next application on a blockchain? And they said, I don't know who to ask when I get stuck. And so we've tried to address that. We've created a Discord community of Web3 developers. And so here in this error message, we include a link to it, but there's lots of other places you can find this. Right now we have thousands of people who are going through this pathway at the same time as you, and a huge developer community in our Discord. So if you do want help, if you do get stuck, don't worry. We try to make it easy with these error message, but also a live community, which, there's Figment employees who are there helping all the time. There's the other people in the community outside of Figment helping. We've got a really nice community going. So if you're worried about getting stuck, don't worry. We have people ready to go through that. So I wanted to just show this, that you can go through these number of steps to go through this pathway, and all the way through staking tokens, and we can show you that you're actually doing it and verifying it along the way. So that's Learn. And again, if you finish this, we'll even send you dots for completing it, so you can kind of keep going on your journey with Polkadot. Okay, can we switch back to the slides now? And I want to sort of build on that first part, which is really about introducing people to Polkadot, going through the basic concepts. And I want to tell a story about DataHub, which is this node service I showed, but I want to tell it in the context of how we got there and how we built this other web app, which is much more complicated, called Hubble. So the brief history of Figment is we started out running a validator, and we run lots of validators and nominators and things like that, and we run a bunch of things on Polkadot. But we started asking a question, which was, who are the good validators? Who should you delegate to? Who should you stake with? And to do that, we needed to start indexing the blockchain. And so we created a block explorer called Hubble. And the idea with Hubble is that we can go and grab all this on-chain information and present it to people in a way that's easy to understand, and you could stake right from the interface. And so what I want to do next, as we move into the more advanced section, is talk about how we built Hubble, some of the challenges we faced, and what you can do about it. Now, to jump to the end, everything we've done is open sourced. And I'll show where to find all this code, but I just want to say, I'm going to walk through some of our challenges and how we're solving them, and of course how we ended up building DataHub to solve these problems. But if you want to just go grab the code, it's all there for you as well. So again, I want to talk about how we built Hubble, the sort of developer or development challenges we faced, and also a little bit about how we've architected it and what we're doing next. So here's behind the scenes. Here's how Hubble works. Is that there's essentially 3 layers. At the bottom layer, we are using full nodes and accessing standard RPCs or REST interfaces or WebSockets. There's lots of different ways to get data from these blockchains. But as you start developing, you realize I can't always just directly query the blockchain. Sometimes there's some data that I need to either index and store in a different database, or some stuff that's not available all the time or is too slow. So you end up writing this in-between layer, this sort of gray box where it says indexer for validator and event histories. And usually this is a surprise to a lot of people, is that you have to, 1, run the lowest level nodes, 2, write this indexing code, but really what you want to be doing usually is focusing on the top, your actual web app. And so that's really why we built DataHub, is to say, okay, developers, you can focus here. Just focus on the top. We'll provide the 2 bottom layers as a service. And so again, I want to talk about Hubble. I'm going to get back to Hubble and how we built it, but I want to take this opportunity just to say, this is why we built DataHub. We were building this complicated web app Hubble, and we ran into these challenges. And we said, hey, I bet other developers have these challenges. And so far, this really turned out to be true. And so if you're a developer out there thinking about building, you can study the Hubble code base, see how we've done things, and really look at how we've approached this indexing layer and also sort of the hosted nodes layer. So just a quick summary of everything I said. If you want to try DataHub, I flipped over to it earlier. We'll go back to it, and I'll give us a slightly more in-depth demo in a few minutes. But here's the key benefits of it: is you don't have to run nodes. You have a support team. You have a support chat of developers ready to go. We have this working at scale today. So if you're worried about, am I making too many requests? I'd love to see where people are at, because we're doing, many requests, more than I ever thought really imaginable today. Some people ask, how does it actually work? What does it look like behind the scenes? A quick peek into that is that we have developers coming through DataHub, and really the fundamental abstraction here is an API gateway across a bunch of different nodes and services. And I'll go into a demo in a minute, but I just wanted to share that a lot of people ask, what's actually happening here. This is sort of a very high level view of how it looks, but I'll get into a much more in-depth demo now. So if we can flip back to my screen share, I'll go through 2 things. First, I will go through, what is Hubble, how does it work, and then I'll go into a little bit into the code of it, and then I will jump a little bit into a demo of DataHub. Okay, great. Here we go. So if you've never seen Hubble, it's right here. It's just hubble.figment.io, and yeah, we have a bunch of blockchains on there, and we're doing a lot of this indexing. We've done a lot of work on Polkadot. And so if you click into Polkadot, you'll see it here. The main view is really about, since this is an app which is for token holders to look at different validators, you'll see, how much has been staked over time, a list of the validators. You can click into any one of the validators and get historical detail about, here's what they've done over time, here's their stake over time, here's their uptime history, here's all the events that have happened. And so really the reason I'm going into this level of detail is to say that this data exists in different forms in the blockchain, and we are sort of indexing it and creating it into a sort of standardized form. And so that's really what Hubble is doing. If you want to see how all this works, there's a few things to look at. So here is our GitHub. It's github.com/figment-networks. Here's Hubble. If you want to run it yourself, it's a Rails app. There's a lot into it. All these different networks are there. But, this is something that is not a new project. I'd say this is one of the first really proof of stake block explorers that was out there. It's been around for a long time. There's been a lot added to it. So there's a lot to study. If you want to get more into some of the sort of indexing things, we have a number of different indexers for networks. So if you just go in here, maybe and filter it by indexer, you can see Near, Mina, Tezos, Cosmos. We have a lot of networks where we have written this code. And so for the developers out there, like I mentioned, Hubble is a Rails app, and you can sort of see at that application layer what this looks like. But we also have this code down here, which are these indexers, which are written in a different language. This is written in Golang. And so if you add those 2 things together, you can kind of sort of get an app like Hubble out the other side. I want to jump quickly back to the DataHub. So I'm going to stay on my screen share, but I'm just going to go quickly back here because I want to explain one more concept that is maybe not obvious. which is that for DataHub, we have a number of different services. So here for Polkadot mainnet, of course, we have the RPC, we offer the WebSocket. We also have the sidecar, which is sort of a newer API. We have some custom services, which are different from the main Polkadot node. And so here, if you ever wanted to search every transaction for an address, we have that. It's a really cool indexer we built. If you ever want to search any of the staking data or any of that uptime data I showed, is a special indexer we built. And our strategy here is we've open sourced the code. You can take it yourselves, or if you just want us to run it for you, here's the as a service version. So we have all that for Polkadot mainnet. We have all that for the West End testnet. We're adding it for Kusama. We have Kusama RPC and WebSocket right now. And so I wanted to share that just to say, if you're looking at getting started, you don't have to develop against mainnet. There's lots of course, there's many networks of Polkadot, and we offer many of them as well. So if we can just flip back to my slides, I'll sort of get to my closing part here. Thank you. So the summary of what I was talking about is I wanted to share all these links. So if you're just getting started, Learn is a place to go. If you maybe developed on Ethereum before and you want to learn the Polkadot concepts, Learn is a great place to start. You can sort of pattern match about things in other blockchains and how they work in Polkadot. If you already know, like, hey, I just need nodes, DataHub is the place for you to go. If you want to study a more advanced code base, I would recommend hopping on our GitHub and really studying Hubble. There's a lot that's going on there with our indexers and with our web app. If you just want to jump into our community and chat with other developers, people going through the Learn pathway, people building Polkadot apps, we have a really big community in our Discord as well. So that is the end. Thank you very much. And if there's any questions or anything else to chat about, I'm happy to do that now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was great. So yeah, we do have a few questions. The first one comes in from David Schmidt. And do you plan on building something around ink and smart contracts on Polkadot?
Sure. Yes. So as you'll notice, what I showed mostly today was around the RPC, low level type of things, and we're slowly building up the stack. The last thing I demoed really briefly at the end was our transaction search and our sort of staking data. So we're moving from the lowest level, we've added indexers on top, and then really next thing to focus on is smart contracts. And so as an infrastructure provider, what you'll see from us is probably ways to access smart contracts, either index your smart contracts or make it much easier to develop them. We probably won't go out and do a lot of creating new smart contracts, but we'll make tools to create them easier, to manage them, to index them. That's the layer we're going to play at.
Amazing. And to extend further on that, Substrate has all of its palettes and people building their own custom palettes, as well as, we've had like 2 talks now about different VMs and different types of contracts. How do you go about trying to support these different, more custom layers and custom APIs that might get built into a Substrate chain?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, we are going to be reactive to developers, as opposed to us choosing which is going to be sort of the winning smart contract language. And so, as an infrastructure provider, I would say that we are not on the cutting edge. We're sort of a fast follower to see what developers are doing, see what's growing, and then see how we can support it. And so, we're not going to pick a winner. We are going to just watch and see what users ask for and see what we can build. And that's probably going to be our approach in the future. But yeah, we're super excited. I think, to me, the more options that happen, the better it's going to be for developers in the long term. Even if it's confusing for new people, like, hey, which smart contract language should I use? I think overall, in the long term, it's going to be much better.
Yep. Awesome. And actually, a little bit related to that, we had another question come in is, do you guys have like a sort of like thesis or model for all the upgrades that you have to deal with along a whole multitude of networks, not just Polkadot, but specifically Polkadot? Like, how do you think about that when you go to develop?
Yeah, so we're in a bit of a weird position. We started as a validating company, and we're on 50 different networks today doing proof of stake validation. And so we've had to be pretty good at being multi-network from the beginning. But in addition to that, we've had to be pretty good at listening when an upgrade happens. And so, I don't have a silver bullet here, except to say we have an awesome team. We have a research team dedicated to knowing when we have to do upgrades. The thing that if I could have an ask for the community is, I wish that more communities did active test nets and did a lot more testing in the testnet, as opposed to just kind of doing a lot more stuff live. I know it might take a little longer, but I think that level of coordination in the testnet would be much better and much less stressful than doing things live on mainnets.
I totally understand. I totally hear you there. No, it's even hard for me to keep up with all the changes going on in all these repos. It's so lightning fast. Okay, so last question. This one comes from Eric Vanderwall. But if you're willing to answer, by the way, you don't have to, but how many independent substrate blockchain nodes do you have running, roughly-ish?
I'll have to look and see. The hard thing about scaling a service, so let's do some inside baseball about how you'd actually run DataHub. A request is not a request, meaning someone might be asking for the latest block, and someone might be doing something from 6 months ago that's a super long range query. And so scaling these things out is really challenging to think about, because of course you want to run the right number of nodes, but not too few and not too many. And so here's how we do it: is we do a weekly profile of sort of what people are doing, with the idea that in the future it will look more like that. And so the answer of number of nodes, it's always growing, it's always increasing. People are not using this stuff less, which is great. I'm happy to be working in this space. But the fundamental challenge that we face when running something like this is how our users' request patterns changing. Some requests are really expensive, and some are instant. And so that's really, if you're thinking about doing a service like this, really understand your users' applications. And this kind of ties into the previous question about smart contracting. Are people going to move more towards smart contracting? Are people going to be doing basic RPC requests? Those are two very different things. And so that's what I'd look at if you're thinking about node count and how to scale this up.
Yeah, I actually said last question, but that kind of brings me to just something I'm really curious about
Please.
now. Over time, and if you can give an example of some good notable ones, maybe specifically in Polkadot, it's fine in Ethereum going to DeFi, but how have people's requests for blockchain data changed over time? That just seems like a fascinating topic to talk about, please.
Yeah. And so, Ethereum is easy to think about just because there's more examples I can quickly draw from them. But what I found is a couple things. One is that many requests that we see on a service like DataHub are for the latest X. What's the latest block? What's the latest price from an Oracle? And actually, those are pretty easy to fulfill, right? It's very, very easy. Where we're finding now is with the popularity of tools like the Graph, where we're indexing smart contracts, people are trying to, and actually, something like Dune Analytics, people are trying to get much more advanced about what they're asking of blockchain and what they're asking of data. So what I would say is that you have this bifurcation of a ton of requests by number. Just number of requests happen for latest X. But equally intensive on a processing perspective is these sort of deeper analytics questions for index data on something like the Graph or a visualization tool like Dune Analytics.
Actually, that's really interesting. Has that increased or decreased the number of stress on your systems? Because they do their own indexing, from what I understand, but they do need to initially read everything from the blockchain. Does it decrease over time, or does that have been up in your numbers?
Yeah. It's the way that this manifests is always surprising to me. One of the things we really worried about and thought deeply about in the beginning was, should we run archive nodes? Do we just need full nodes? How much data do we need to make available? Do we even need to keep all the chain? And the answer, I don't have a clean answer, unfortunately. It depends. It really depends on the use case. Some people really want to reindex data from the beginning of the chain. Some people just need the last epoch or whatever. And so I wish I had a clean answer to make my life a lot easier, but I don't.
No, that's great. I'm sure it's been very difficult and challenging and entertaining for you to kind of make your way through this. So thank you so much for your time. This was fantastic.